I'm sorry, I don't want to hear you.
I can't understand how you got over a normal apprehension about getting into that little module and making that jump from that to the moon from where you were. It just is unbelievable. Did you go through special training, or was it just something that came natural?
Well, remember that all of us in the space program at that point were military test pilots. We had been in war. We had been in tough situations in all sorts of aircraft. So the spacecraft were just another one of those. And yeah, we trained a lot. We did a lot of training. And it was just, that was part of life. But the whole point was, as I said when I first made my decision coming back on a carrier from the Pacific, that a new phase of human activity had just been entered into. And we were explorers. We wanted to find out what that was and be a part of it. So we realized there were risks, but the rewards were worth the risks, and all of us were willing to take it. You have a point.
Yeah, I heard you say that you were on the moon for about a little over 30 hours. I was just wondering if you guys slept.
I'm sorry, try that again.
I heard you say you were on the moon for a little over 30 hours.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you guys slept while you were there.
Oh yeah, we had 2 periods out, so we had a period in the middle where we went back in and got some sleep. Kind of fitful sleep, I'll have to admit. And had some food and rested and got ourselves ready to go out. The first period was just to set up a science station out in front of the spacecraft. We saw pictures of that. And the second period was that we were to trek up Cone Crater and do a geology trek, gather the samples and bring them back. Yes, please.
Yeah, Dr. Mitchell, I was curious. I have 2 questions actually. Did you get a chance to bring any moon rock back? And
Beg your pardon?
any moon rock? Did you get a chance to bring any moon rock back? And what type of camera equipment did you use to shoot those pictures on the lunar surface?
Okay. Yes, we brought back over 95 pounds of lunar material, the most at that time. The guys after us had heavier equipment, had longer stay period, had improved equipment, so they could do a little more than we could do. But we did what we could with our equipment. And the camera, we were each carrying, if you look closely, we each had a Hasselblad mounted on a bracket, so we could just click it and point our body and click. And then on the little rover, or rather the little transporters that we had a Maurer sequence camera that you could put it on sequence, and you could take 3 frames a second, 5 frames a second, all up to about 20 frames a second. So it clicked away while we were taking pictures, while we were doing a traverse. And we had another one of those in the spacecraft window taking pictures as we landed. So we had pretty good pictures. Yeah. What was the temperature? Well, it depends on what time of day it was. We particularly landed, you see, the moon has very extreme ranges of temperature. At a lunar night, it gets down to almost absolute zero on the dark side. And it gets up to well over 200 degrees on the front side when it's light. So that was the reason in our shooting landing sites and trajectories to get to the moon, we wanted to land early morning lunar time right where we were for 2 reasons. It was cool, and secondly, as we landed, the sun would be behind us, and we could see the shadow of the spacecraft as we approached. We could watch our landing trajectory much better that way. So, for our mission and the next mission or so after us, we wanted to be off the moon by the time that the sun was roughly 10 o'clock our time in the sky. Couldn't get too hot from that point on. And also the guys after us had a little better equipment that they could handle a little more oxygen and water, and so they could last on it a little longer than we could. Go ahead.
When you were out in space, were you able to see any extraterrestrial crafts?
No, none none of us really saw anything up through the Apollo program. Now, I've talked to all of those guys, but I don't, I think during the shuttle program, there were some reports of UFO encounters during the shuttle program. And certainly, as pilots on the ground, whether pilots in the Air Force or in the Navy, I didn't personally have such an encounter, but I know many of my colleagues did. And they were debriefed and told to shut up and don't talk about it, and et cetera, et cetera. So we quit reporting for about the first 10 to 15 years. That's then he was let him go, and then I'll do that.
Thank you. I was just curious, do you think that any of the technology that was necessary for us to go to the moon or for space flight, or even some of the advanced technologies that we have today, could have been maybe in a way acquired from our interaction with extraterrestrials?
From extraterrestrials? No. No, there may have been some, but most of the technologies we have today invented right here. And although I happen to know the book by Colonel Corso, he claims quite a bit of back engineering. Well, there may have been a little bit, but there hadn't been much. And I do point out to you young people walking around with your new cameras and telephones, you have more computing power in those cameras and telephones than we have in the spacecraft. Go ahead, Jim.
Quick question. What do you attribute the secrecy around Area 51 in that situation? What was the point of the huge secrecy?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question that we don't really have the final answer to. It started off, I'll give you a little history here. It started off with the powers that be, both in England and here, were afraid that people would panic and with alien visitation. Well, after the Orson Welles story in the 1938 of a Martian invasion, some strange things happened, and it's scared the bejesus out of a lot of people. Now, what did take place? Wait at me when you're ready to.
You just keep going as long as you want.
After the Roswell incident in July 1947, since I was there at the time, and I have a copy of the newspaper actually, on the day after this was reported, it came out in the Roswell Daily Record that an alien craft had crashed. And the next day, it came out, oh, that was a mistake, it was a weather balloon. Now, President Truman, at that point, was confronted with a real dilemma. The OSS, which was the intelligence community during World War II, had been disbanded. The CIA had not yet been commissioned. The U.S. Army Air Corps had been separated from the Army and had just become the U.S. Air Force. And so nobody knew what the hell was going on anywhere. Nobody was in charge. And what President Truman did was created a special advisory committee of military, political, and science people, university people, and it's called the Military and Joint Intelligence Committee, and abbreviated MAGIC 12. Now, there's a lot of debate. I mean, there's a lot of people deny that even existed. Well, it does exist, and it did exist, and it's come down through the ages, through the 60-some years here. But what President Truman gave them, he gave them authority to manage this problem, and that was the beginning. And the Magic 12 grew to quite a few more people, and although it had military people, it had university people, and it had political people, but all very respectable people in those days. But it expanded out. And then the National Security Act of 1947 really gave them some power to handle all of this, and a level of secrecy was imposed. And unfortunately, over the next few years, this group expanded their power and was able to shut down a lot of things, and a a lot more people got involved, the corporations got involved, and so what we have going forward for the next 60 years is one hell of a mess. And it's still, slowly we're starting to break it out, but it's not